All right. Good day, everyone. Yeah, so it's been a long time since I've done a video, and I've been struggling with OBS, trying to figure out how to get this to work so that it's not lagging or anything like that. But I think I've got it to work, so we shall see how this goes. And yeah, so first and foremost, I hope everyone's doing amazing and feeling great. So, what I wanted to talk about today is the Jake Barber interview, which was like really crazy. This dude said a lot of wild things. He was talking about telepathically summoning UFOs. Also, he was talking about, retrieving this egg or something like that. And even like during a summoning process, they encountered, another group of aliens that were like not okay and they like fought in the air, which is interesting because I myself personally, like when I'm doing my summoning, right, of the orbs, I've actually seen these shadow craft that seem to just come really fast. It's like a shadow, like a glowing shadow that's they're in the shape of a diamond, sometimes in the shape of like a boomerang or like a sideways triangle. It's super interesting and weird, but yeah, it's definitely something that I've experienced. Um, so basically, with this dude and all of the information that he said, me personally, I don't know if his experiences are real. What I think is going on is that they have created all of these real factors of the phenomenon, what people have experienced, and they've put it into this story so that they could share with other people in a way that they can almost like control the narrative, right? They can control what questions people are going to ask, like this whole concept of, people can influence the psionic team and they have to have like an open heart, right? When he talks about like how they were being, like shuttled in these vats, that the dude who, Michael Herrera, who walked up on them, he said that the military guys who were outside of those were thinking about killing them and throwing them in the jungle, right? So it's like you're telling me that you've got this psionic team inside of this windowless vat, being shuttled onto a UFO, and they are well taken care of. They're very happy, But then at the same time, they've got these Marine special ops people out there who are willing to kill other servicemen, you know? Like, that would definitely affect somebody's psionic abilities, you know what I mean? Like, for whatever they're doing. So I think that that's a total lie. We've heard of stories about these people getting taken and then being used to integrate with this, psionic technology where you utilize the mind to control the craft. And it's been talked about how many people don't make it, many people die because of the experience. But there's a lot of cool things that this guy said, and so I basically wrote it all out, and I would just like to present it to you guys. So let us begin. Yeah, so Jake Barber was a military veteran with 30 years of experience in the late 90s. He worked as an aerospace mechanic before being unofficially brought into the Department of Defense and Intelligence Operations, focused on crash retrievals. He was in the desert. They would use this different tech and he would go out and retrieve it if it crashed. And sometimes what he's experienced is that a UFO crashed, right? All right. Here we go. So, the crash retrieval program. Jake was contracted as a helicopter pilot and assigned to retrieve crash craft for an intelligence department. This connects to the Office of Global Access, the OGA, a CIA program reportedly tasked with recovering crashed assets worldwide. Last year, during the UAP disclosure wave, stories about OGA surfaced, confirming the existence of such a program. Jake's account aligns with this perfectly. So yeah, if you guys remember, there was that release. I think it was in like the London something Post or something, the Guardian maybe, where they talked about a whistleblower coming out and saying yes, there's a CIA program called the OGA, which they basically go all over the world, Office of Global Access, and they retrieve these craft that come down. It could be under the guise as like satellites or special ops planes or whatever, But this thing exists, and so that's just a piece of like a piece to the puzzle of the story that he's giving that makes sense. And then, of course, you all know what the five observables are, right? Instant acceleration, hypersonic velocity, transmedian travel through air, water, or space, and solid material, anti gravity, and low observability. Low observability. Dang, that's embarrassing. All right. So let's do this transition. Oh, I'm learning. Okay. Yeah, so according to Jake, many of these craft were our own technology developed by the US military since the 1940s. However, he also mentioned seeing craft that could pass through solid matter, including objects rising from underground. This hints at advanced plasma physics, specifically engineered ball lightning or EVOs, exotic vacuum objects, which can move through solid materials. And yeah, interestingly, this remind. Okay, I'll just say it out. Sorry. But yeah, so he talks about these craft coming out of the ground, coming out of a ridge, right? There have been cases where people have discussed this exact same thing, where they say the UFO went inside of a tree, or into the ground. It just came out of nowhere. Like I've heard this story looking at old interviews on the Eyes on Cinema page, right? Very interesting that that's a facet about this whole thing, and it's something very hard for people to grasp, right? Like, oh yeah, it went through the walls, did it? Like to come out and just say that really adds validity to this existence and this ability for these crafts to do this. And interestingly enough, if you listen to Bob Greenyer, he talks about how these EVOs can pass through solid matter, solid steel. We see instances of ball lightning going through a plane, not causing any holes, just passing right through the matter. So this is something that exists, and if, let's say our technology or extraterrestrial technology utilizes this, anti-gravitic, plasma physics, EVO, plasma sheath technology, then it would give them the ability to do that. And it's pretty interesting because there's a Star Trek episode about that where they find a Klingon or a not Klingon Romulan ship or something like that that was like trying to find some experimental cloaking craft, and it was like inside of an asteroid, and they like turned on their cloak machine and they like passed through the asteroid, right? Like that's I swear to God, like Stargate and Star Trek are telling us what really exists. It's how you propagate that kind of information into the zeitgeist, because like if this were to just come out of nowhere, people would have no frame of reference to grasp onto it. It'd be like aliens, warp drive, teleportation. Like I can't even comprehend that, and their heads just explode. But if you have like a movie or shows talking about this stuff, it becomes a little bit more digestible for the individual to accept that as a reality, right? Furthermore, the we all know what the Philadelphia or the Manhattan experiment is, right? Where the supposed what is that thing called? A battle cruiser, which they were trying to cloak or teleport. It's really we don't really know what happened. What we know is that something happened, right? And it's talked about how people ended up inside of the walls of this craft. Whenever it blipped back into our realm or something like that. And if you were to think about the concept of having the ability to pass through solid matter, if you use this technology on, let's say, a battle cruiser, right, and it passed through matter, for the individuals who were on that craft, maybe it affected it as a whole, and because of gravity they fell, right? And then so when it came back, they were trapped inside of the walls of the ship or the floors of the ship, right? That makes sense to me, and we know that they've been experimenting with this technology, like I said, since the 1940s. So I just find it fascinating, that he's talking about this kind of stuff, and there are these accounts of this exact thing. Very, very fascinating. All right, so the emotional and telepathic communications, yeah. So he talks about feeling this overwhelming sense of love, a mixture between love and fear, and like he was possessed by the most beautiful goddess. It was a feminine god, a feminine energy. You know, this is something that's been spoken about for eons. You know, we know that Mother Earth is alive, Gaia, right? We know that she loves us and she cares for us, and it's not some bearded dude up in the heavens, you know, demanding us to pray or watching us all the time. It's a cosmic consciousness that this physical world has because of its vibration, its magnetic poles, its energy, it's bona fide energy, right? You have these chakra points on the planet where you have all these megalithic structures that are all over the place. You know, like they were tapping into this, and anything that what I believe is that like if anything has this ability to tap into the 0 point, then in some form or another it has the ability to be conscious, right? And that's how like these plasmas are able to exist and able to orb into existence right above us because they are from that 0 point and they are consciousness. So like that gate brings consciousness into existence, and is it possible that we are just a piece of that consciousness that have embodied these mathematically um, conceptual bodies that allow us to move and experience in the grander universe of everything? It's super interesting. And another interesting thing that I really wanted to say is that yeah, he spoke about having the emotional experience, and this aligns with the testimony by Jonathan Wagons, who in 1997 was sent to secure a crash craft in Peru. He reported feeling like a telepathic communication from the beings. He was said, guard the perimeter of this crash craft in the freaking jungle of Peru. Don't go up to the ship. Just stay there until the team comes. Well, dude, man got curious. He walked up to it, and he says that he was just like hit with this like unreal emotional response, and it was like they didn't want to hurt them. They almost like felt sorry for him. They were showing him love. And he says that to this day in the interviews of him that he wishes that they would have taken him, that he could go there, that he could be with them, because what he felt was so powerful and so real that nothing compares to that experience. And that's very similar to what Jake Barber discusses. He talks about how that energy guides him to this day. So that's a very real aspect of this thing that he was talking about. Let's see, what else we gonna talk about here? Yeah, on the topic of telepathically communicating with these things, this follows like the remote viewing, the work that Robert Monroe or Hal Puthoff or Egon Swan, the gateway process, all of this stuff, they've been telling us that this thing exists, right? And if you guys haven't checked it out, I strongly suggest you read Inger Swan's book, Starfire. It's very good. It's a novel. It's it's a fictional piece of work, but he wrote it under under his experiences, right? So it talks about like this consciousness that leaves. He figures out that he's telepathic. He's like some rock star dude or something like that, and he ends up like remote viewing like a hidden operation where the government has devised a microwave weapon that can cause people to riot or get angry, which kind of makes me think about what happened in 1999 at the Woodstock Festival on that Air Force Base. Maybe that's what that was. Really weird how there were just like a bunch of fucking huge ass fires and people going crazy, right? But yeah, and so he basically goes up there, he interacts with this computer, this satellite, consciously, and he changes it, and he, blah blah blah. It's really good, and there are a lot of really cool hints and things about how the inner workings of the government works in that kind of area. And then also, since I don't really read like novels, it was pretty interesting. Like reading like a intimate sexual scene. It was pretty funny. It was like the chick was like the way his tongue stuck out vulgarly from his mouth as he licked his lips. It it like repulsed her, but in some strange way, she loved it or some shit like that. It was funny. It was really funny. All right, my bad. I'm just kind of rambling right now. All right, so let me change this. Scroll down. There we are. We'll go back here. Transition. And we will scroll down here. There. Transition. Okay. So yeah. So calling the UFOs, right? Jake mentions psychics being able to call craft. This is significant because it shifts telepathy and remote viewing from fringe pseudoscience to accountable military techniques, actionable military techniques. For me, this isn't hard to believe. I've had my own experiences. Yeah, so like I've had my own experiences with this stuff, and what else am I saying here so I can just relay it to you off the cuff? Yeah, so when I started doing this, I don't know why. I just, the first time I was actually talking to someone outside on my trampoline, and like we are just looking up in the sky and talking about, consciousness and also, like the book of Enoch and how, they're like, do not fear anything, right? And then all of a sudden, a craft flies by, and it's just a straight line. One of these shadow craft flies directly over top of us, clear as day. Happened. I freaked out. I was like, shook, like what the fuck? Because I had never seen anything like that, And then in that moment, I realized how I was responding to the experience, and I was able to calm myself down. And then, 10 minutes later, another one flies, and it's like an obtuse triangle, and I freak out again, but not as bad. Then 10 minutes later, a perfect one of those, three light triangle craft fly right over top, and I think that was actually the government checking out what was going on because it was like really high up and it was going pretty slow. But after that, I was like, well, crap, like that was definitely something. And I actually ended up posting this on Reddit, and somebody who's up north from me, you know, he said that he had seen the exact same thing, that Barcraft, which is pretty crazy. But yeah, so I started just going out and telepathically calling these beings, and wouldn't you know it, they just start showing up. They pulse, they'll fly right over top of me, then they'll fly away. They do like a weird like, and just kind of like fade out and then pulsing in. It, during the experience, I find myself trying to deny that it's actually happening. I try and tell myself, oh, I'm seeing things, there's no possible way. And then they'll end up coming right over top of me and then turning around or going like 45 degrees another way. And even then I find myself thinking, no, they just went in a straight line. There's no way that happened, and but it's happening, and it's happened to many people, and the to the ones watching this video, you can do it too. And all you need to do is just calm your mind, throw away those intrusive thoughts, throw away what you want to happen, and just open yourself up and look up and telepathically call them, and yeah, it'll happen. I see no reason why it shouldn't happen at all for everybody to experience that. And he's talking about doing this and talking about having his own, club, unquote, that he's putting together to call these things. And you got people like Robert Bingham, who basically started this. He's got a YouTube channel. Also, you have Mr. Anomalous, he has videos of him doing it live on camera right in front of you. Then also you have the Plasmoid Anomaly Study Group page, who he may not have been summoning them, but he was definitely calling them and interacting with them. Not even telepathically. He would actually shoot a radio signal like 2.5 gigahertz, and use like a mirror for a light reflective, and they'll show up. So in a way that he was summoning them, but in a more physical way, and that works. I'll probably do a whole video. I would really love to get either of those two, Jeremy from Plasmoid Anomaly Study Group, or Fran, the Mr. Anomalous dude, and just talk to him and figure out, like, yeah, have a conversation so that anybody who watches this video in the far near future will have some sort of reference. And yes. Oh yeah, there was one bit of Jake Barber's story where he was talking about how they got the this Panasonic book, but the hard drive was missing, and then so they end up somehow finding it 25 feet underneath the water at like this high elevation lake. And in my head I'm like, okay, how did they know it was 25 feet underwater in some random ass lake? Like, how? Does it have a tracking device on it? Because if so, you guys should have definitely used that, to whatever, I don't know. That story just kind of felt weird to me when he said that. But yeah, so also the dog fight. I think I told you guys already about my experiences when the orbs would come. You'd also have these shadow craft that would come, and I don't know. I don't know if they felt nice. I did strongly feel a very energetic, like, jolt of energy. Like, it buzzed. I went immediately into fight or flight. Whereas when the orbs are there, it's very bubbly and playful. Like, whoa, yeah, like this is cool. But when the shadowcraft come, it's more like, it's kind of weird. And if you guys haven't looked into it yet, the Nordic being in the Antarctica that the 4chan leaker was showing, which I find to be really interesting. I'm kind of on board with it. And in my head, they took this story from this Nordic being because they knew there was a group who wants full disclosure, and they, like I said, made their own story so that they could give it to the public and they could be in control of the narrative and the questions that are getting asked, right? If you guys haven't checked him out or checked out the 4chan dude, please do it. If not, depending on how this video goes, I'll probably just do it. I gotta get better at this, like, making presentations, because I really do love it. And this is kind of different than my normal, like, hard-working thing that I do, where, like, I'm actually, like, in the lab, like, editing and putting everything together. Yeah, please let me know if you guys would rather see that than me just ramble. I'll definitely do that and stop this. But I would like to do like a live every single week or something and just talk about this kind of stuff, and I don't know, call up one of my friends and let you guys listen to our conversations about consciousness, But yeah, Nordic being in Antarctica, very interesting, very reminiscent of the Jacob Barber thing, and the photos that he released of this egg that actually has like hieroglyphics on the egg, which is the exact same symbols that we see in the traditional UFO lore, like the Roswell crash, which we know was an actual crash with actual bodies, extraterrestrial in nature, right? The government's already told us that. That's a fact. They had these weird, hieroglyphics that Jesse Marcel saw and brought the I-beam back home to show his son, and he distinctly remembers this. Then you also have Daniel Sheehan, who was the Jesuits' lawyer, who was able to get into one of these private, these skiffs, and look at these documents, and he actually traced this the symbols on a piece of paper, and it's some form of hieroglyphics, And it kind of reminds me of Stargate, like, for real, a lot. And then there's a movie called Hangar 18, which is suspected to be like, it's a movie, but there's a lot of information hidden inside of the movie, and it's actually really spot on. And the hieroglyphics that they show in there, I'm starting to think that it's possibly something exactly like that. Because we had that other guy, the DOD guy, or he was like Green Beret, and he talked about the orb that was just floating in the air, and there was like some weird holographic hieroglyphics things that was like changing and moving, you know. This is a known fact, and this right here fascinates me because when we look at the uh, the ancient site of Tanis, which is this barren wasteland in Egypt, and it's like a circumference of just nothing but destruction, um, stone monuments, granite, quartzite, all destroyed, disheveled, like somebody just smashed it or a huge explosion happened. And on these granite and other hard stone structures, you know, that are like 20 tons, you know, 100 tons, perfectly carved, beautiful, they have burn marks and they're like melted, like the rock literally melted. And the vitrification is what it's called. We can't produce that heat, you know, sticks and stones. You know, you need extremely high heat to do that, right? So it just gives credence to like a plasma or solar blast or something, or maybe, you know, the energy propagation that they were generating from the Great Pyramids and sending it all over to these other sacred sites. Something happened and caused an explosion, or maybe it was like a magnetic vector for uh, you know, solar electric energy to just come and zap that area. Because when you look at the actual area on a map, it's just like literally just one area that's barren wasteland, and they even say like the sand is like you're walking on flour, like nothing lives. It's nuts. But why did I bring that up? So the hieroglyphics that are there are like some of the only ones that exhibit, you know, like a high technology or like a machining, right? Like this isn't your typical etch and sketch like regular Egyptians were doing. This is like very beautiful stuff. And could that be the same exact language that we see on these craft? I don't know. I got so many questions and I'm looking for the answers, and I hope that you guys are too. But yeah, I just wanted to share my thoughts on this whole Jake Barber thing. I may post this, I may not. I don't know. It's kind of a low effort video, but I just wanted to make sure that my camera would record and it wouldn't be lagging, so that I know that I can use this footage instead of having to set up a GoPro and then transfer that over to my phone, then to transfer that over to my computer, and then wait for a very long time to load it into, you know, iMovie. But if I could use this and put all of my stuff, I'd love to do that. Yes, everybody, I hope you enjoyed this. Much love. Peace out.